Perfect. So again, thank you to our Compass for Caregivers webinar tonight. Tonight, we are really excited to have Jeff Titcomb with us. Jeff is a licensed funeral director from Stauffer Funeral Home. And tonight we're talking about navigating funeral planning. Before I introduce Jeff, I do just want to do a couple of housekeeping items. Again, for those of you that have been with us, you know that we can't see you or hear you. You are communicating with us through the chat box or through the Q&A. If you take your mouse and hover over the bottom part of your screen, you should see that Q&A looks like a little cartoon icon. You can type in any questions that you have, and we really encourage you to ask anything that comes to mind as Jeff is doing his presentation. And some of them we may toss him during the presentation, others we may wait to the end, but we definitely want to answer all of your questions about death and funeral planning. Again, not an exciting topic, but a real topic that every one of us is going to face at some point. So without further ado, I want to go ahead and tell you a little bit about Jeff. Jeff has been serving families in the Frederick and Washington metropolitan area for 37 years. He earned his bachelor's degree from Xavier University in Cincinnati, Ohio, and his associate's degree from Cincinnati College of Mortuary Sciences. Bringing comfort to those who have endured a loss has always been Jeff's main focus. And I am really excited to have Jeff with us tonight. I learned a lot just talking with him the other day as we were practicing. So I know you'll take away some great information. So with that, Jeff, I'll have you go ahead and turn your microphone and your camera on. And we're going to turn me off.
Hi, good evening. I appreciate you all taking the time to, invite me to discuss about something that's considered uncomfortable to talk about. End of life issues, pre-planning funerals. It is a celebration of one's life. I find with a passion with those people who take the opportunity to discuss and make plans in advance. I've personally witnessed the benefits of the results of the time you put in to do it. There's a lot of different reasons for you to begin to start that process of creating your life's journey, because who knows you more than you? You've got the expertise, you've got the history, and I really enjoy getting into the details because essentially everything you do is a gift to those people that are going to have to step forward when the time comes. To proceed with those arrangements. If there's nothing in place, I see a lot of stress added to the fact of just having lost somebody they care about. Now they have to make their way through the process of making a lot of decisions. I think somebody went through and figured there were close to 200 different decision points through a funeral process. And it's not something that you can get back to us later on. You're numb, you've been through an awful ordeal of having lost somebody you care about. Now you need to walk almost like a zombie through the process of getting all these details done in what turns out to be a whirlwind matter. So by talking about things ahead of time, it allows you to put your fingerprints on things, and you know who your family members and your significant others are that will have to step up and take care of this. And there's many different types of people. I've had folks come in going, I want to plan the basics so that my families know what I want to do. And then I've had other people come in going, look, I can't trust my son to buy a box of paper clips. I better micromanage everything. So the advantage of doing this in advance is, one, you've got the time to do this. You can ask the questions that you find important. You can shop around and talk to people until you find that there is an establishment with whom you have a rapport and feelings of comfort. So there's a lot of details that you can work into. So you can kind of get all the foundations set up, because this is a part of the end of life process. Sorry, banging the desk, I'm new at this. So if it's shaking, we're not having an earthquake. But by planning medical directives, powers of attorney, this is just a part of the estate process. It's even more important for folks that may not have family, may not have a significant other. Guess who it's going to fall on? If you don't take care of the details ahead of time, it may be somebody you don't even know that was appointed by the courts or through the Friends program for coming up. You can take care of a neighbor if no one is there. And so now they're in your hand, you're in their hands, pardon me, as far as leaving it to the winds. I've had people say, I don't care, I'm not going to be here. Well, it's going to fall on somebody. And I think it's much more beneficial for you to take control of the circumstances and situation. Because first of all, you got to figure out, what do you want to have done when the time comes? Are you going to have a burial? Are you going to have a cremation? Do you want to have a green, environmentally friendly, burial? Do you want to have your body donated to science? These things don't happen overnight, and there's a lot of paperwork involved to set all these things up. So at the time of death, it's almost too late to do some things. But by having a plan of attack ahead of time, you can have all those details planned. If you do want to have a traditional ceremony, whether cremation occurs before or after or going to the cemetery, it's all a matter of what you want to have done prior to, the final event, if you will. Details, what type of music do you want? What type of service do you want? If you belong to a specific religious affiliation, there are usually protocols. You work with the pastor, and we would strongly recommend you do that. That if don't know much anything else, but I do know I want to have a service or a memorial service, at my church, to engage the pastor now while you have the time. Use their guidance, use their expertise as far as coordination and planning. Every church has different policies and procedures. They can walk you through the different verses or readings, music. I'm sitting down with a family that has not made a plan, and it's like, well, what's mom's favorite hymn? What's her favorite passage? I don't know. A lot of times the kids don't go to the same church anymore, or maybe they don't go to church. And then the time that you had passed, your pastor may not be there. So now you have children that aren't familiar with what happens at your congregation, talking to a pastor who may or may not know you. So, what you're going to end up with is somebody's greatest hits. Over the course of my career, I've been a funeral director 37 years, but I was licensed when I was 10, so it doesn't matter that much. But I've been to a lot of churches where I would sit in the back of the church and I would almost verbatim go over the eulogy. So it's like, you can leave these things to other people's hand, because guess what? I'm dead. It doesn't matter anymore. But you're providing a gift to your family. You're giving them a hug. By planning those details, they can focus on the things that they have to, but they have that peace of mind and that sense of calm. Sure, there's a lot of sorrow, but when families come in knowing that there's a pre-arrangement in place, there is a sense of calm there, because they know arrangements are made. Meeting with the funeral director and going over details, not going to be here all day. It's a matter of reviewing what you have set up in a less stressful environment and going over the details and just kind of connecting the dots, the dates and the times with everybody that's there. So there is a lot of work. Like I said, 200 different decisions that need to be made. Better do it now when you have the time. You're in charge. You get to say what you don't want to do. Lord, I tell people that, making your arrangements, if you're going to have some type of memorial service, you have the opportunity now, write your own eulogy, write your own homily. I've have lots of folders with envelopes in there that, we'll lock the doors and no one will leave until we have this read. You can write individual letters to your family. My God, how amazing that is, to know that families don't have to worry about, did we do the right thing by mom or dad? Mom or dad did it. So that's off the table. So the family can focus on taking care of each other, grieving over a loss, and receiving those friends. And now they're in a calm environment, knowing that mom and dad are going to be speaking throughout this entire thing. By God, there are thumbprints, fingerprints everywhere. Who is the essence? What made you? What made you tick? What were your joys, passions, hobbies? All those details go in. The more that you put into this, the more benefit that comes out to it. Right? Even with regard to cremation, there's a lot of things that you need to do. It is not a matter of, we pick you up and take you to crematory, we're done. No, there's a lot of details that we need to have signed death certificates. We need to have cremation authorizations in place. We need to wait 12 hours, and there needs to be a legal identification. And it's like, all this could be in, it's still giving the family an opportunity of saying goodbye. And then any melange of, we can have cremation after services. Anatomical donation, you need to work on that paperwork and get that set up ahead of time, because those organizations have their own team of people that would then respond when the time came. We can act as an intermediary to facilitate, but those things need to be in place. A lot of people think by simply putting, I want to be an organ donor on my driver's license, you're done. That just gives people a heads up about what you want to do and gives them direction should you end up in a hospital or situation versus a full body donation. Now, I always tell all my families when I'm sitting down with them, I'm kind of like a free range chicken. I'm all over the yard. We'll get every topic covered, but you don't want to mow the lawn the way I approach things, because it's like pulling from here or there. So I encourage you that if there is a specific topic or a discussion point or legal issue that you want to discuss, please send them in, because this is a conversation. I can't get into specifics because pre-arrangements are as specific as the individual. There's a lot of vital statistic information that needs to be obtained. We are responsible for obtaining a death certificate and filling it out properly with the vital statistic information, filing it with the jurisdiction where the death occurred, obtaining certified copies of the certificate. Now, I did provide Christine with some handouts for you for your review. Well, what kind of information do you need for your paperwork? Who needs to see a copy of the death certificate? The way the laws are set up, and again, I told you I'm going to be all over the place. With regard to the laws set up, one spouse cannot liquidate or transfer assets without the other spouse's knowledge or consent. Makes sense to me, but the death certificate will be in lieu of a signature. So my worksheet that I have for distribution here gives you an idea as to who needs a copy of the death certificate so you can plan ahead of time. They're a lot easier to get nowadays than they used to be. When I started out, no, they weren't on papyrus, but people were ordering a whole lot because once you filed them, you never knew when you're going to see them again. So now we file them electronically. We can always get more. A lot of times I'm helping children make arrangements for a parent. And it's like, well, all right, Bob, how many death certificates do you need for your dad? I don't know. Every time I asked him, he told me to mind my own business, because dad's thinking he just wants to know where the coffee can with the cash is. No, there are a lot of details involved. I don't want to leave you to your own devices after you're done here. We kind of want to put the path together so that people have an idea of what happens after we say amen at the cemetery, or, here's the urn, had the committal services or whatever, or families taking, the urn into their home. It continues on for there. And so it's important that we have all the phases prepared and lined up, because, I say when you lose somebody you care about, it's a tornado, it's a whirlwind. And, the days of person dies on day 1, you're meeting the funeral director on day 2, day 3, we're having a visitation, day 4, we're saying amen. That doesn't happen anymore because people are scattered all across the country. And I try to get people to take a breath, pause, because you need to get your footing again after having the wind just knocked out of you, so that you can kind of approach these things from a holistic standpoint. There are so many things to determine, do you want a visitation if you're having burial? Do you want an open casket, closed casket? What kind of clothing do you want? I had one lady that went in a mink coat and nothing else. It's like those details, what you want. I don't mean to digress, but there's a lot involved in the organization. And especially if you don't have anybody that's going to be seeing to your care, are they going to be appointed? Are you going to ask a distant sibling or a neighbor? It's going to be important for you to have all those items in place. If you want to be cremated, since we have a crematorium, would make sure that you have signed your own cremation authorization, because I touched upon that rather quickly a few minutes ago, is that we can't cremate someone without authorization. And so there's a specific pecking order for that. And so if there is a surviving spouse, they're in charge, it's their signature. If there is no spouse, then we go to adult children. Every child would need to have a signature on an authorization. If they're not in town, we would send things out of town so they can get things done. If there is no children, are there parents? No parents, brothers and sisters. Then you're going into cousins. My God, start doing the math. Nieces and nephews. I got 16 nieces and nephews. No, if you want to be cremated, get with your funeral director and see if you can get as much done in advance as possible. Otherwise, if there is no one, then you're looking for somebody that have to be appointed. And, the Good Samaritan law, where you have to wait for a period of time before someone steps up. So there's a lot of legalese. I mean, currently cremation is permanent and irreversible. So we want to make sure we have all that documentation in place. And what's going to be happening with your ashes? Do you want to be scattered? State of Maryland has rules and regulations about scattering. You don't go up to Mr. Park Ranger going, where's a good place for mom? If you want to be scattered in the water legally, you need to be at least 2 miles offshore. If you scatter in your home, a lot of times when you're selling your property, I've seen disclosures now where you got to have a list of every pet you've ever buried. I'm one of 6 kids, and we had a lot of pets over the years. My God, it looks like its own pet cemetery when you figure over the years. So it's like I've had one family lost their son too darn early. They brought his ashes home and scattered in their backyard. When a highway came through, they lost half their backyard for eminent domain. So they lost their son twice because it was not a designated cemetery area. So I tell folks, think about what you want to do. And we just don't want to get people caught by surprise. And if you don't have anybody who's going to be taking care of these arrangements, it either falls on you or someone's going to want to do what is expedient for them. And so if you want to have an input, you'll have an input. If you want someone that you don't know to take care of things, then it's going to be, well, I'm going to need to have to set this up financially so that no one's going to use their money. No funeral home is going to wait for an estate to be settled before they are compensated. So, and then those are specific issues as far as what you'd like to do. Now, in Maryland and a lot of other states, as far as financing and funding, a funeral home cannot be paid until there's been a death and we've gotten a call. So as far as prepayment, there would be pre-funding where you would sit down with your funeral director, go over all the details. And I tell folks for pre-arrangements, we're going to talk like you had died yesterday. And so what are we going to do now? What do you want to do? We go over all the details without the stress, all the minutiae, the 5 points, talk about the details and the specifics of the service. We would actually construct an estimate or even a contract. And then should you decide that you do want to pre-fund, the funds would go into a funeral trust. The state wants to make certain that the family is in charge of the funds so that if the funeral home closes, you move out of town, pardon me, I try to use all of my words. Or if you decide that they're not really for me now, that money is in the trust account that follows you, goes with you, and you present that trust wherever you want for your arrangements to be performed. This is a very transient area. People relocate often. And part of my job is to facilitate the transfer of that information and your desires to wherever you end up. So I say, when you get where you're going, talk to your friends and family there. When you determine what funeral home you want to use, you contact me. I will facilitate the transfer of information. So you're not starting all over from step one, and then you can follow up with your paperwork. As far as what can apply to the specific jurisdiction. So you're able to make your arrangements and set all those up ahead of time, all those details by having family and friends together. And whether you want to alleviate a burden, because there's many different ways that you can pay for these funeral arrangements. You can use existing life insurance. You can pay with check, use a credit card, but payment is going to be expected at the time of your passing. By having all this done ahead of time, if you're planning on using, your life insurance, part of the pre-arrangement is you let me know what insurance policy you want to use. I write it down, it's in the file. So if your family can't find your policies, that happens a lot. So we have the information in your file that your plan is you want to use, XYZ funeral home, insurance. And here's the policy number. We'd have the claims already there. We would file the claim for you. Okay, at the time, we would then be paid by the insurance company for only that which is contracted. And then the insurance company would then distribute the balance to the beneficiaries. So not the entire policy would come through the funeral home. A concern is you need to continue making those insurance payments and premiums until the time you pass. If it ends up where you end up in a Medicaid necessity, then that insurance will either need to be, turned into a reduced paid up policy because now if you're in a facility and cannot make your premium payments, that's going to fall on your children. So I hate to get, to me, 98% of prearranging is in the details. The last couple of percentage points are how you want to, if you want to prepay or pre-fund it. If you do decide that you want to pre-fund, you're able to lock in, a lot of what you're doing. It's going to be dependent upon what you do. And I always tell my families, I'm on a salary. I'm here for you. I don't care what you do. I just want you comfortable with what you're doing. And it's a step-by-step process. I've met with families 3, 4, 5, 6 times. I'm still meeting with some families. I want you to think about it and digest all the details involved. There is no rush, no concern. The whole idea is you've got the time. And so while you have the time, take the time to go over all those details so we can customize everything. I've seen people come in not having plans in place. Now, guess what? We need to make all these decisions right now. And this adds to the stress. Certainly it does. Now I've got to put on my eyeballs every now and then because I have notes and I have, Q questions and answers. If we have any questions, please, by all means. I don't know if I'm supposed to open or if somebody's going to read these for me.
Jeff, let me give you.
Sorry. I'm new to this.
Let me toss this one to you because it kind of, you touched on it a little. So the gentleman has asked, his wife has Alzheimer's. What is involved with donating a brain to science?
Okay, you would need to work through your neurology physician who's helping you with regard to care. There used to be a consortium through Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore where they're doing brain studies. But that is set up through a teaching institution and your physician would know what is out there and accessible for you because those have to be set up ahead of time so that in your prearrangement file, we would have notes in there that at the time of death, because you're dealing with a timely nature of having that brain donated for research and study. So we need to know that we would be able to go directly from the place where the death had occurred, transfer you over to the institution. And also sometimes these institutions have their own subcontracting people that would come directly to the place of death and bring you. So we don't want to have you incur additional expenditure when it is not necessary, but the time to do it is well in advance of their event occurring. So I would talk to your physician. They would let you know about what research institutions are there. And if they are taking any more volunteers, I know Johns Hopkins was very active in the late 80s and 90s. And so I don't know if it was a matter of where they have a lot of people in the system suitable, but unfortunately that's the limit of my knowledge there is knowing that you set these up because you got University of Maryland, Johns Hopkins, George Washington, maybe Georgetown Hospital, DC. So there are definitely avenues and there's physicians all over the place. I think every physician in Frederick County is over on Thomas Johnson. So, there's places where you can go. It's like
perfect. And I also heard from McGee White from the Alzheimer's Association is one of our co-hosts, and she has some information, so we can email that out after as well. I've got another question about pre-funding, Jeff. Do you know if the pre-funding dollars are counted as an asset of the family member at the time when he or she applies for Medicaid?
Very good question. No, the funding for funeral expenditure is exempt from the Medicaid spend down. Those are viable funds that you can use. And while they have funds before you get into that spend down process, because you have to meet, be below that ceiling of, I believe, $2,500. So in talking about your insurance policies, those are considered assets because money can be drawn from them. A funeral home cannot be an owner of someone else's insurance policy, nor can we be a beneficiary of someone's insurance policy. What I would do is what is called collaterally assigning the insurance proceeds to the funeral home. It's irrevocable. It takes the insurance funds out of their assets and would be used for the funeral with the understanding that once it's set aside for the funeral, those funds must be used for funeral related expenditure, inclusive of and not limited to grave markers at the cemetery, engraving of headstones, opening and closing costs at the grave, all those things. They may not be an expense through the funeral home, but it is overall funeral expenditure. So if you have pre-existing insurance, don't cash it out. That was the old way of doing things. And when you cash out insurance, you're lucky to get 25% of the value. You can lock in the face value. There's ways we can do that. Again, what I mentioned before is that if this insurance policy isn't existing, you are still going to need to maintain and make the payments and make the premiums on those to make sure that it is an active and enforced policy once the person has passed. So sometimes there are hardships, and then we would talk to you what the next step would be. But funeral arrangements, pre-funding, that money goes into an irrevocable funeral trust, and it's only limited to what you're doing in the confines of your funeral arrangement. That funds then would pay the funeral home at the time of need, only for what we're doing. And then it would be the estate's responsibility, if there are any funds left over, to then do a final accounting with the state of Maryland. So there are details, just a matter of keeping the receipts. The state wants to see, here's money going in, where is it going outward, so that people aren't sheltering funds to obtain benefits, which are there to help people who definitely need them. So long-winded answer, as you said, I use more commas than I do.
Thanks, Jeff. All right, well, those are our questions for now. We'll let you get back on course.
Oh, dear Lord. Okay.
Jeff, do you want to talk about, you talked a lot about pre-planning. Do you want to talk about what happens when someone dies? Like, what happens?
Okay.
Well, I mean,
thank you. I appreciate it.
With regard to the funeral home, right?
Exactly. There are certain protocols. If someone was to die in a hospital, by law, the hospital can only keep someone there for 72 hours. That's why it seems that, boy, the hospital's rather anxious for, to get mom out of there, because they cannot be a permanent repository. The state of Maryland doesn't want people to be kept at the hospital. They want families to make decisions, or if nothing is done, then the deceased ends up going to the Maryland Anatomy Board. So that's a whole different story. So if you essentially, regardless of where the death occurs, you call your funeral home 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's what we are here for, to be there with you at all hours. And then we would take you, step by step through the process. If someone passes at home, are they under hospice or palliative care? If they are, then we would tell you, call the hospice folks. They'll get a nurse on the way. They have to render an official pronouncement. And then we would talk to the hospice people when they get there, and to get that proper information so that we can begin our process about getting the death certificate initiated. And then we would come to the home. In conjunction with that, we then would talk to you. Are you ready for us to come to the house? The time for running around has ended. If you want to spend some time with your family or your loved one, you can certainly do that. Now, we don't want to hear back from you 3 or 4 days later, but we can certainly give you time to be, peacefully at home. I was with my mom when she died, and no one was going to rush me through my process. So, when someone dies, the time for running around has concluded. So we want to do this at a pace, in a respectful manner, and just things step by step. Now, if you find somebody that has not been under the care of a doctor, oh my God, someone just fell down the steps. When in doubt, call 911, and then they will come out. Now, if it's a matter of, oh, I woke up and the person's been gone, then you would need to contact the police non-emergency number. The police would be dispatched. They then would survey the scene, checking on medications, situations, circumstances. They then would be in touch with a state of Maryland forensic investigator. They would go through all their protocols, and you're like, well, we need to bring the person to Baltimore for further toxicological study or a postmortem or an autopsy. But it's at the discretion of the state first. You would keep the funeral home in the loop. We would talk to the police, and they would let us know that, yes, we've spoken with the forensic investigator. Nothing seems unusual. We're releasing them to the care of the physician. And then we need to get our information together. We need to know case numbers, with whom did you speak, who released cases, that type thing, because there is a lot of record keeping that is done behind the scenes. And then certainly 24 hours a day, we would come to the home. Back to the hospital situations, when somebody's in a hospital, they have a morgue facility there. the hospital has their protocols that they need to review, making certain that there was not any issues with intubation or any of their procedures that may have precipitated the person's death. So they have their protocols, notifying the doctor. They also would then require family to sign an authorization of release so that the hospital knows which funeral home you're going to be using. And then most of them, there's always that one or two, but they require that the funeral home, when we come to pick up your loved one deceased, we have to bring with us an authorization that we have permission by the family to come. All right. Nursing homes a little different in that those are similar to residences in that we respond 24 hours. They have staff on the, nursing staff there that can render an official pronouncement. Now, the nursing home can't say, come pick up Mrs. Smith. We want to hear from the Smith family so that we know that we are the funeral home of record. We want to hear from you to make certain you've been notified that, the death has occurred. Do you want to go over there and spend some time before we come at 2, 3 in the morning? Okay. We focus on bringing your loved one into our care at those wee hours, but nothing is going to be done until the next morning. So if you want to spend some time there, again, we can only do it once. And I want to do this comfortably, meeting your needs in a non-hurried manner. So if the nursing home calls and says, mom has died, whatever, call the funeral home immediately. The funeral home can't do a darn thing until we hear from you. I have, in my early days, I've been to several nursing homes in the wee hours, and there's 2 other funeral homes there. Each member of the family calls a different funeral home. Now, what's going on? So we want to make certain that, upon entry to your long-term care facility, they ask, what funeral home do you want to use? Now, 10 years later, it may be a different funeral home. You forgot to let the nursing home know and update. Certainly, nurse at the funeral home, thank you for letting me know, but we need to hear from the family. So always follow up. When in doubt, call your funeral home and they will take you step by step and go over the protocols that are necessary for that time, for when that time comes. Once we have someone into our care, then we would go over the details of what you would like to do. When you call us at 2 in the morning, most importantly, if there are pre-arrangements in place, let your funeral director know that there is there's an arrangement on file so that we're not asking you the little tiny questions at that hour. So we can check. Our directors take their laptops home. We're accessible to the electronic files. And many times we can kind of go over and review circumstances and situations with you at that time, or we'll just focus on the immediacy of bringing someone into our care. And then one of my colleagues will follow up in the morning and assess what we have going on, and then schedule an appointment time for you to come in and begin to talk about arrangements, what you'd like to do, the protocols, and give you a basic time frame, because we have to draw on many different people when we're making these funeral arrangements. Are you going to the cemetery? Are we going to church? Are people waiting to come? You were expecting people to come in from out of town. All the logistics, the days of all the family being within a 5-mile radius has ended. So when we bring someone into our care, we need to know, what our procedures are going to be. This is a very international area, growing by leaps and bounds by the minute. There are some countries like China, it takes 4 or 5 weeks for someone to get an exit visa. So we would need to act appropriately in the preparation and care, so we can wait until family comes, and so everybody's needs can be seen to. So many different scenarios as far as what you'd like to do, but you being in charge, it will fall on you. A lot of times, guys, we say we live forever. My dad was an insurance agent for 50 years. He's like, don't worry about me, just put me out of the special collection. No, Dad, you're not that special. Can't do that. So it's a matter of, it's going to fall on you if your spouse doesn't want to take care of things. So you owe it to yourself. If you have a parent and you are it, and it's going to fall into your lap, do yourself a favor and have a plan of attack in place. Do it now, because it's going to fall on you later. Growing up, when we had a family meeting, no one left the room, because when you did, that's when everybody else voted. So, if it's going to fall on you, it's important to kind of go over all the details now. What estate issues are you going to be dealing with? Who's going to be the executor of the estate? Do you have to, register the will, probate? You'll need to have a legal pre-planning in place as well. And that is just as important about what you do at the funeral home. It's what you do before, powers of attorney, medical directives, medical power of attorney. When mom had her stroke, I had everything taken care of and I walked around like an important man with a briefcase. No one would talk to you until you had those papers in place. Who do you want to be as your medical power of attorney? What do you want to happen when the time comes and you're unable to speak to yourself? I mean, for yourself, pardon me, not to yourself. I talk to myself all the time, but it's like, do you want life-sustaining measures? At what point do you want to draw the line? You just have to be, these are important decisions. Everybody would just as soon whistle past the grave, the cemetery, but you're still going to be dealing with things. Really, currently, I think the recent survey said that the death rate is 100%. Once you're here, at some point, you're going to leave, okay? There was a survey of people 55 years and over asked about, are prearrangements a good thing? 80% of those people responded going, yeah, it's a good thing. Well, as a follow-up question, have you made prearrangements? You're talking 30% of those people said, yeah, I started. And a lot of it was, yeah, I made a phone call, got some basic things. No one wants to talk about it. And you want to bring it up to your kids. They're like, what, are you sick? Why are you doing this? The kids don't want to deal with the fact that your parents are going to be, at some point gone. It's like, mom died when she was 88. I still felt like I was an orphan, They're going to be at a different level than you are. The whole thing is by putting things in place so they don't have to struggle. They don't have to worry about those specific details because it's already planned out. There's so many things we can do now with regard to a celebration of life that we didn't have available 10, 15 years ago. Lord knows what we're going to have available for folks when the time comes. A lot of times people, relocate. There's no longer a family home. Children are elsewhere. There is no place to gather. And so we want to have, a gathering or repast or, a reception or celebration. I tell folks that standpoint, have it somewhere other than your home, because I think it's one of the most difficult things to do, going from somebody who's grieving, just lost somebody you care about. Now you're a host or hostess. I know a couple of people, the first thing they do is sit down on the couch and take their watch off. They can't take a hint. By having the receptions at a different location allows you to, when you're ready and you've had enough, you can go home. I'm banging the table again. Here at the funeral home, we have catered events here. Everybody is centrally located. Everyone is here. We can have the receiving during the visitations and the receiving of friends and family. It kind of breaks the ice. People come together. There's an old adage that you plan events for, weddings and baptisms, happy times, birthdays, bringing people together because the joy you share is joy increased. When you're celebrating and honoring somebody who was loved and lived, by bringing people together, grief shared is then grief diminished. It's still there. Your heart is broken. You're not going to be getting over this. No one gets over it. Anybody tells you to get over it, haven't been through it yet. You get through it. It's through the valley. And so by having things in place, people are still going to grieve, still going to lose. But my God, you've wrapped your arms around them and given them a hug. The last thing I can do for you is here. This is who I am. This is where I'm from. You can worry about this other, there's a lot of other stuff for you to worry about, but I've taken care of a lot of these details. You don't have to worry about hymns, songs. My Lord, I have had Elvis Presley. I have had ZZ Top, Led Zeppelin funerals, visitations, receiving times to come together. Because again, you come together regardless. There doesn't have to be a casket there. There doesn't have to be an urn there. Somebody was an avid fisherman. They got together at his favorite fishing hole, had a picnic, had music, his music. It was a celebration of his life. It was paying tribute and thanking God for the time he was here or she was here with us. And now we're returning them to you. However you feel from a religious perspective, it's that this person mattered, this person impacted our life. And like a diamond, there are many different facets. The more facets to the diamond, the more brilliant the luster. And so by pulling all these different avenues and perspectives of this person's life, I didn't know how little I knew about my parents until I got married. My wife started asking me a lot of questions. I'm like, wow, I thought I was a dutiful son. What, grandma's name was grandma. Who was this vibrant person? It's like she did not sit in a chair and wait for her doting son to come forward. This was an active, vibrant person who had a life and hobbies and passions. that's like the pottery wheel. That's the type of people that I want. I want excerpts from all parts and all facets, because another story, my mom was 88 when she passed. We had a little visitation before service. It was just the kids. We're all thinking that it's just going to be friends of the kids that are there. All mom's friends are gone. Well, the day of the service, we were actually overwhelmed at the number of people who showed up on behalf of my parents' friends, because my parents spent as much time over there as they did over here, and very advocating, parts of their bowling league and everything else. And so we're looking around going, my mom can't be here, but I'm here on her behalf. And that's just amazing when you realize that you tend to touch more lives than you realize. And it's not until they're no longer here do you soon realize it. That's what it's all about. It's hoping people can put perspectives on the life so that they can continue on. And it's like, wow, this was a very loving, vibrant, crazy, happy person, And for those of you that may not have extended family, how do you want your story told? What do you want to have done? Everything will be in place, because it'll be a lot easier for those people who are going to step forward to take care of things, knowing here it is, I've got a roadmap. Everything is together. So now they've got a step-by-step process from which to go, so that it's seamless. That, they can do either what's convenient for them, or you've provided that convenience by having all your details in order. So here's the path, here's the paperwork, take me from A to B, and we have it done.
Jeff, we actually have one of our viewers has written in to say that you helped them through their mother's recent passing in July. And certainly they're giving you tremendous compliments. But they remark, and this is a wake that I went to, that mom had a folder of what she wanted, and you helped them to honor her wishes, which made the process so much easier. And I remember when I was there, just so touched the calm and the love that was there, because mom had really made that process so much easier for her children. So this viewer is certainly advocating what a beautiful opportunity to give a gift to your family who's still here.
And he actually received that gift, and it's like, wow, mom's doing it again. Mm-hmm. Mom's in charge. She's always been in charge. How old you are, but by having that in place, you could feel her. And what a sense of peace you provide.
It was palpable. It was beautiful.
It really is. And it's like, as much as, oh my God, this is a cookie cutter service. I've done a lot of crying in my days, because then you can feel, here is how things were laid into place, and here is the result of that preparation. And it's like being a gardener. You get as much in as you get out.
Right.
No matter what, I trust my kids, they know.
We have another question. So, Jeff, what are the procedures if a loved one passes here in Maryland but wants burial in another state? How does that work? Or the reverse?
Yeah, seamlessly, very easy to do. We work in concert with, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Virginia. Over the course of my career, I've had lots of graveside services in upstate New York. We can facilitate, depending upon where we're going. The funeral home that you select can take care of everything from start to finish. The only requirement would be if you're going out of state, if you're not having services or visitations. And now the cemetery is, in Frostburg or, down in Norfolk. You can deal with one funeral home throughout the process. We just would need to have a licensed funeral director in the state where the burial occurs present. We do this all the time for folks that are out of state that need a Maryland, license on site. So it's not like you need to contract with more than one funeral home, unless it's your desire. If you're going to be going, yes, mom's from this area, we have, we're going to be having visitation and services up there, then obviously we would work in concert with the funeral director there to do the most seamless transition to the location where he or she is going to be buried. It could be a matter of, we brought mom here to keep her close to us. There's no one here. We were planning on doing everything out of state. Then we would take care of the local paperwork, see to her embalming and care. And then depending upon time and distance, they would either be driven over road, or usually the more cost effective can be going on airlines and setting that up from, we'll take care of everything here to the airport. The funeral home receiving will take care of everything from the airport back to their location. So the funeral, because I hate to say in non-answers, but it is seamless. It's just a matter of we all work together, funeral directors across the country, to make sure that the family's needs are being met in the most seamless, respectful, and cost-effective way. So, I had people like, Mom did not like to fly a plane. We want her driven. And it's like, oh my Lord, traffic accidents, delays, it was forever. It was a 2-day trek on the road, but that's what Mom wanted. And I'm sweating the entire way going, oh my God, we're not meeting cutoff points. We need to be here by a certain time. And there was a delay. Family is laughing because Mom said, I didn't want to go on a plane, but it's my fault. Yeah, I didn't want you to do that. So it's easy. There's paperwork that needs to be in place. You can't cross a state line without a signed death certificate and burial transit permit. That's what your funeral directors would deal with. So the whole thing, again, they're about pre-arranging, and we do that a lot. Mom's here. We want to use ABC Funeral Home in North Carolina so that I have everything in your file electronically and physically. So many times when we're getting a phone call at 2 a.m, we don't have to look up at our, who are we going to again? It's in the file, phone numbers, addresses. What are we doing here? Are there visitations here? Or are we seeing just simply preparation, and dressing and preparation will be done, wherever you're going? The time to talk about it is now, before we have the event occur. So it's seamless. We deal with a lot of embassies and getting paperwork done for going out of country. And that's interesting, but we can certainly accommodate. It is a problem. It's what we do all the time.
So many things to think about. Jeff, we've got about 10 more minutes. I'll let you wrap up, but folks, I'll just give you a reminder. Please put any questions that you have in the Q&A box or in the chat box so we can get them to Jeff as we spend the last little bit of time. Jeff, I know one of the things that you had given me that we're going to share. So then after the death, right, there's more work to be done. It's not over yet, right? After the funeral.
No, there isn't. That's dealing with a lot of the state issues and wrapping up of the affairs. Statistically, it can take on average from 8 months to 14 months to finalize an estate. And I always tell somebody that if there's someone you want to get back at, make them your administrator or executor, because there's a lot of paperwork involved. And so that's part of the process that we kind of help through those handouts that you're going to get about who needs a death certificate. That's part of handling the estate affairs, you can still drive the car, you can still live in the house of your surviving spouse, but at some point those names are going to need to come off the bank accounts. I tell folks that if you've just lost a spouse, at some point you need to get their names off of the accounts, because to do it now would be a lot easier than if you did nothing. You and your husband are both on the accounts, you pass, no one else is on that account, those accounts are frozen. And I'm banging the table again, sorry. So it's, when you get into that process of dealing with your estate issues, it's resolve those things. Titles, house and car. You can still drive the car, you can still have insurance, but if you want to donate that car or give it to a relative or family member, you need to transfer the title. Well, the person has died, it's on the title, you need a death certificate for the transfer. So it's a part of that paperwork process. Do it now while you're in that mindset of handling your estate. Or many times we'll come back and go, oh, we need death certificates from Dad who passed 12 years ago, because there's a lot of things with his name on them still. So there's notifications of, if he worked for the government, Office of Personnel Management, the funeral home is responsible for notifying Social Security that this person with this Social Security number has passed. It's right at the top of the worksheet. There's an 800 number there. We usually do this within 24, 48 hours. We do it immediately as best we can. Once we have that Social Security number confirmed, we send out our form required by law. And then it's up to, we suggest that the family follow up with a phone call to Social Security, because the department with whom we speak, or the funeral home, and the department that issues the direct deposit, they must be related because they don't talk to each other a whole lot. So we give the 800 number, again, part of that record keeping, taking care of the estate. Follow up, contact Social Security. If you are a surviving spouse, you're able to a little lump sum benefit of, I think, $255. I hate quoting government because it's like quoting the stock market, but there is a stipend there for a dependent child or a surviving spouse. And then that may alter the surviving spouse's benefits. So it's important to call the number, because husband or wife has died. Depending upon, the units put in, the surviving spouse may or may not be able to have an increased monthly payment. Again, calling the number if there is no surviving spouse to stop the direct deposit. I think everybody's getting direct deposit now, because I've had circumstances where the family didn't call and go, oh, look, there's more money in mom's checking account. I'll keep paying bills. Well, 6, 8, 10 months later, they're getting a call from Social Security going, we need some money back. I hate to do a Joe Biden like that, but we need a refund. And it's like, oh my God, now we need to deal with that. So you would need to contact Social Security, talk to the individual's place of employment. There may be a group policy or a pension or a death benefit that was through their employer. Life insurance policies, notifying them, because the insurance is there to help families in a time of need. So, contact them, have them send out claim forms, unless you're using it as an assignment with the funeral home, then the funeral home will help with regard to that claim. Investments, stocks, bonds, talk to your broker if you're lucky to have one, or a simple IRA. One certificate per bank usually is the general rule. My wife's grandfather had a bank. My God, they asked for 8 copies and they kept all 8 copies. So you'll see on the worksheet a little paragraph there about the banks. It wouldn't be a bad idea for you to assess what you have at this time and actually make those phone calls to the institution going, if I had died yesterday, what are my family members going to need to resolve these issues? And then in the electronic planning guide I had sent, there's a place for you to put what I have where. It's like that suitcase when you're going to the hospital to have a baby. Everything's going to be in there. You've got one central location to help step by step to help those people, because many times the executor is also a family member and they lost somebody they cared about. So their life is going to be, oh my God, by having things planned out and in order, in talking to an attorney and getting an estate plan together, that's what they are to help you with, to have all those things tidied up. They can, recommend what the best way of titling things to. It's like, I do know that when, your name's on the house, at some point your name's going to have to come off the deed. It's called a quick claim deed. I'm a funeral director, not a real estate attorney. So, I did stay at a Holiday Inn, but those things are usually waited until the second person has passed. And because they're rather involved, you'll need death certificates in order to put that up for sale. Or if you want to, deed that over to the surviving spouse. That's what the attorneys are there for, that if you want to set up some type of trust, they will go over those things individually for you to make certain things are smooth and the transition is made as seamless as possible. That's what they're for. My point is that here, these are the things you need to deal with. I can help with some, but I don't want to leave you here. You're the wins. We're done. Have a good day. No, that's what my little death certificate worksheet for. It's a tick off as far as what you need. If you did serve in the military, there are some benefits that are available to you there. With the DD-214, if you are in the military, that's your military discharge paper. That is the ticket that allows you to receive certain benefits. Veterans are entitled to their ashes to be placed in a state veteran cemetery or columbarium at Arlington or Quantico. It all depends upon your level of service. And by having that available, minimally, the funeral home obtains the flags from the VA. We then would coordinate and arrange for any type of memorialization and honors rendered from the specific branch of the military in which you served. And a lot of times folks are like, well, that was just a part of my life. Well, maybe a bigger part to your family, because everything we do in this building is for those people that come in the front door. After someone has died, I'd like to think that, your pain is over, you're on to your next adventure. Everything we do is to help people, I don't want to say transition, but focus on what has happened in your life, place things in perspective so that you can continue on your journey, not going back to where it was before someone has died, but just do things in a satisfactory way so you can continue on with your life. Tears are the salve that you have that cures the hole in your heart. It's always going to be there, but you cry as much as you love. And so this is the time to take care of it. By doing this ahead of time for your family, they can focus on the tears instead of figuring out, geez, did we do everything that mom or dad had wanted? And so rather than just put you out on the curb for special collection, are so many things you could do.
Jeff, this is a fantastic. I truly had no idea, and you have inspired me to have some conversations with family. And it doesn't sound like it's ever really too soon to start thinking and planning and laying the groundwork to make things easier for those left behind later.
Right. It's certainly important to involve family members, because guess what? They're going to be the ones that are going to step up to put in place those things that you have made. Now, I've had some family going, oh, I'm going to invite the kids over for Sunday dinner and hit this with them over coffee. Don't present it that way. It's that these are things I'm thinking about. These are things I want to have in place so you don't have to worry about it, because they may have their own families to pull in, but presenting it and making it a positive experience. And it'll take them a while to get where you are mentally, because obviously you were thinking about some things for a number of years before you took the step of making a phone call and sitting down with somebody and talking. There is no cost for sitting down and talking. It's information. Get your information, get the steps. And, you know, if you're not comfortable with what you're hearing, with whom you're hearing things from, this is the time to find somebody that you do feel comfortable with. That's the nice thing, because I said I am on salary, so that takes my needs off the table. So here, this is, you know.
So very late.
There we go. Sorry about that, folks. I'm going to put up Jeff's contact information as soon as we finish up. I'll put up a slide with Jeff's contact information. And as soon as we hang up tonight, I will send you all an email that has the handouts that he referenced in his other contact, or his contact information as well. So before we finish, one last call. If there's any questions, Jeff, we've certainly gotten some compliments, people really appreciating the information. So I'm certainly grateful for your time, and for all of you, thank you for joining us again. We know
thank
that
you.
It's hard for all of you to carve out time to yourselves to do something like this, but we appreciate that you are here with us tonight. I will also share, if I could, next month. Wow, we are in November, which is hard to imagine. So when are we at? November 11th, I think, is our date. We're very excited to have Terry Lemire, who is an occupational therapist locally, talking about navigating safety in and around your home. Some great, very useful, practical things that you can start paying attention to make it safer for you or for the loved one that you have living with you or in their own home. So I'll send that information out very shortly. I don't see any other questions, so I
just did want to make one notation, is that you have my email on my handouts. Whether you're going to use our firm or not, I am a funeral director. You have questions or concerns, whether you're going to use, call me. I'll be happy to talk about everything, because this is something that we are all going to go through, and I want to get to heaven with 51% of the vote. So questions, call me. I'm here for you. Okay, please.
Perfect. Jeff, thank you so much. We are, again, grateful to you, grateful to all of you for joining us. And I hope you all have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you in November. Thanks, everybody.
I'm honored. Good night.